reference. All right. So we've got, this is a nice example for this context. I'm going to bring up a little recording of this. This is the first couple of measures of a Beethoven Piano Sonata, and I've sort of marked out on the sheet where we can expect to put chords. Is there anybody else, as I'm bringing this up, is there anybody else who wandered in a minute late who doesn't have this packet? I can give you one. Everybody's got one. Awesome. All right. Opus 14, number 2. Okay, let's hear this. Nope. This is the second movement. Okay, so that's as much as we have. Let's hear it again, and then we'll talk about how the chords are working. Right. So, C major, right? We're beginning with the tonic chord. So we're going to say this is definitely in C major. Then, can we see, as a sort of initial analytical question, can we maybe see how tonic alternates with dominant here? And can we find the tonics and then find the predominant as some of our big signposts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I noticed that it kind of alternates between them by using repeats, and it also kind of makes this nice stepwise basically. So I feel like for the most part, just 1, 5, maybe 5, 7, and then 1 again, but it's 1, 6 this time.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, so that's exactly right. So I said, we have this sense of alternating, and the fact that it's not accented is often a way that you de-emphasize the 5. It's clear that it's tonic in control here. The other thing that contributes to that is inversions. The fact that you're using, you use different chord progressions to create, in this case, stepwise motion. You use different chord progressions to create something that's more interesting than 1, 5, 1, 5. That might be an effect you want, but a lot of times you want something that's different. So that kind of undermines any sense of cadence, right? It makes it clear that we're really doing tonic and then dominant, tonic, dominant, tonic. We're really emphasizing like that. So if we go through and first just do the Roman numerals, we see we have 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. Then we have the predominant that cuts that off and says, okay, moving forward to a half cadence. And we'll fill that in just a moment, but I'll go ahead and put this in here. And now this is playing the role of actually being a dominant that stands on its own. So we'll we need to fill in figures, and we need to talk about the particular predominant here. So as Ainsley said, we're going through different chord positions of the 1 and the 5 chord. And this is a good time to practice those bass figures that we've used before, learned before, but haven't used quite as much in part writing or analysis. So the 1 is in the root position, right? 5, 3, don't need to put anything. Second chord, 5 chord, which as we know in C major will be G, B, D, F, if there's a 7th like this one. What is going to be the figures? What will be the figures that I put after this 5? Chris?
4, 3.
4, 3. Yeah, exactly right. Excellent. So this is, remember, both it's showing you the actual intervals you have above the bass, or it's kind of a set of figures that you can memorize, right? D, go up a third to the F. We can often leave that one out if we have multiple numbers. Up a fourth to the G, D, up a sixth to the B. Or wait a second, 4, 3, yeah, we leave out the 6 in this case because the 4 and the 3 are dissonant. 6, 5, where you're leaving out the 3. So there are a set of figures you can measure. If you're looking at a chord, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is this one? You can count up from the bass and get that my intervals are 6, 4, and 3. It's kind of perfectly out there, and I'm going to write 4, 3 after it. Or you can kind of memorize these. And this is a trick that I actually learned from a student a couple of years ago, because this student was writing something that looked like a phone number, which I thought was really strange on their tests. But what they were doing is they were writing out the triads and the 7th chord figures. So I'm going to teach you this thing. Ainsley, have it?
My teacher in high school would call it
The inversion hotline, yeah.
You should write this in the top of your paper so you don't forget.
Yeah, that's perfect. Exactly. So if you think about the triad positions, root position, nothing. First inversion triad would be like a 1, 6. So you write 6. Then a second inversion triad is 6, 4. So there's your area code. Then as you go through our other ones, you have 7, right? 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2. It works out perfectly. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2. You don't have to have it with the dashes to make it really look like a phone number, but it kind of does. So your triads are here, your first and second inversion triads. And then you have your 7th chords, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2. Yeah, so something like that, inversion hotline, I like the name, will help you to kind of memorize these, right? And so this is one of those things that I've seen students write at the top of a worksheet or the top of an exam just to kind of have it out there as a reference point. People will also sometimes write out the circle of fifths or kind of the order of flats and sharps on things. But this is a good thing to refer back to. And if you want to even add more, you could say that this is, root position, 7th chord, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, and this is first and second inversion on there. So I'll try to position this so we can still see both of them. But that's a really good shorthand way to kind of get our inversion signs on here. So we've got 1, 4, 3. If we look to the 3rd chord here, we're back to tonic. What's the figure going to be for this one? 6, yeah. 3rd in the bass, first inversion is 6. Then we leap down here. We now have B in the bass. B, then G, then D. On a dominant here, what's the figure for this one? I'm hearing it whispered. Also 6. And then back to 1. So there's no 7th in this one, otherwise it would be 6, 5. So we have this tonic 5, 4, 3, 1, 6, 5, 6, back to 1. So a sense in which all of this is kind of emphasizing that main 1 chord. Not only does it create a nice stepwise bass line, it goes in sort of perfect counterpoint with the right hand there at the top. Bass goes up, voice goes down, or top voice goes down. Creates a nice little sort of 2-part texture there. So we'll say that all of that is prolonging the tonic. Even within this, it's tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant, tonic, but we'll think of the tonic as being in effect for this whole thing. So this big bracketed chunk here is tonic prolongation. Finally, the chord here. What's the identity of this chord? We've got F in the bass, an A, a D, and an F here in the key of C. Harry. 2/6. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so one of the things we didn't recap from Monday, but that we said there, is that, there's the order of predominance, 6 being the weakest, then 4, then 2. In classical style, 2 is really common in the first inversion, because the other thing that makes a predominant is that scale degree 4 in the bass. So we have that really clearly right here. This sense of 4, 5, 1 is really strong. Or 4, 5 for a half cadence, 5, 1 for a PAC. That sense is really strong. So 4 is the emblematic scale degree of the predominant, which means that oftentimes you'll have root position 4 chords, but very frequently you'll have 2 as 2/6, because you still want that 4 to 6, 4 to 5 bass motion, even if you maybe want the stronger predominant of 2 rather than 4. And that this is something that's a little bit distinct between different musical styles. It's hard to generalize about like this style uses harmonies in this way, but one of the things you could point out is that in classical music, the most common predominant is the 2/6, because you want the bass line like that. In pop music, you don't use as many inversions, so 4 becomes much more common in pop chord progressions, Anything like that is 1, 4, 5, Louie, Louie, whatever. Lots of pop chord progressions prefer 4. And then finally for jazz, you often want to hear 2, 5, 1 in the bass. So jazz will prefer root position 2, root position 5, 1, or all these sevenths in there to actually make that work. Something like that, 2, 5, 1. We prefer them in root position. So each of those 3 styles has kind of a different order of preference that they might use these in. Right. So there's our phrase model, and there's how it actually tends to be proportional. You've got tonic, predominant, going to a dominant, and I would call this a half cadence because it kind of gives us a breathing point, and then it will restart. So I'll just put that above. Half cadence, just so we know, kind of have the bass leap up to connect the phrases. And then we're going to land on another tonic. So what I want to do is give you a couple minutes here to go through and put in the Roman numerals and bass figures on the second half of this phrase. You'll notice there's one chord here. You may have encountered this stuff in high school, but I left this off because we're not quite ready to deal with this accidental as a class. If you know what it is, that's fine. We can talk about it briefly. You can put it in there, but focus on getting these 3 chords here, then these sort of at the end. So take a couple minutes. If you want to work with the people around you, that's great as well. If anything's not clear, turn to them and see what you can work out. play this again for you just while we're working on this too. I'll give you a few minutes here. Let's take about 2 minutes and wrap up. So if we break this into chunks, can somebody maybe walk us through the first 3 chords here? Anybody feel good about what they've got? Jeff?
Maybe 1, 6, and then 5, 4, 3, and then 1.
Yeah, exactly. 1, 6, 5, 4, 3, and then 1. So in other words, it's kind of the mirror image of what the first 3 chords from the first measure were, right? You had do, re, mi, 1, 5, 4, 3, 1, 6, and now we're going to go back that way. It sort of gets there by going do, re, mi, ti, do, fa, so, then leaps up and goes so, fa, mi, re, do. So yeah, exactly kind of reversing what happened there. We get the 7th in there again. Mi, re, do, ti, la, fa, so. So let's skip this chord for now. We can talk about it maybe at the end and see what we know about it. But last 3 chords. Can somebody else take us through the other 3 chords? Harry.
6, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All in root position too, right? So 6, 4, 5. No figures to be found here. So it's perfect. It gets us the other 2 predominant chords, and it does them in the right quote-unquote order, right? A here is a little bit less of a strong predominant, whereas 4, that has the nice F there in the bass, wants to go right. Fa, so, wants to go right there to another half cadence. So let's hear that again. Now that we've got all these chords in place, we can hear sort of. Good. So I want to have us sing along to this a little bit, just to kind of get the sense of it. And first, let's go ahead and sing the bass line along with this recording. It goes a little bit fast, but I think we can sing do, re, mi, ti, do, fa, so. And then just go ahead and sing the whole so, fa, mi, the little passing thing there as well. Turn it up just a bit. We'll just kind of jump in and see if we can keep up, because it's hard to synchronize. Ready? And mi, ti, do, fa, so, fa, mi, re, do, ti, la, fa, so. Let's try to do it again. Give us a little more time. And in the previous movement. And do, re, mi, ti, do, fa, so, fa, mi, re, do, ti, la, fa, so. Good. Now I want to do a slightly simplified version of that. I'd like you to hang out on do until we get to the predominant. Wow, sorry. I'd like you to hang out on do all the way through here so we can kind of hear that that's mostly in effect. There's a little bit of tension when do is not actually present, but it's mostly in effect. So you're going to kind of go do, fa, so, fa, mi, and I guess we could say mi, or we can go back to do. Let's just do do for the second half as well instead of doing the passing tone thing and the first inversion thing. I'm going to put this on do not disturb. All right, so holding out do, we'll hear the last couple seconds of the piece here. Do, fa, so, do, fa, so. So you can kind of hear how tonic remains in effect, right? It still feels pretty okay to sing that, and it shows us how the big harmonic events here are the tonic at the beginning and then the move away from that when the predominant hits and takes us towards the cadence. So that's kind of how I would advocate for understanding a phrase like this, that it really stretches out the tonic remains in effect and kind of structures everything. Then we get to the predominant and dominant. Are there any questions about what we've done so far here? Clear enough? All right, let's look at our second example. The second one, I believe, is more oriented, if I'm not mistaken, more oriented towards practicing our inversions of the 5/7. So this setup that we had there is really common. You'll see one of the things that you'll see in a lot of musical analysis is moving around between the tonic and the dominant, shifting around the different inversions of them. But sometimes you'll see phrases that are structured rather than interchanging. You might see, for example, 1-5, 5-1, which, spoiler alert, is what we're going to see here. So this is a Beethoven song, actually. Let's go ahead and hear just a little bit. Ich liebe dich. So this means I love you in that beautiful romantic language of German. Ich liebe dich. Let's hear I think it starts right on it. And we'll just hear the first four measures, and then we'll go ahead and do some analysis. No, it doesn't. Oh, sure, you're just getting the melody here. Right, and that was basically the phrase that you have there. So cut off the little piano introduction. Ich liebe dich, so wie du mich. It's I love you as you love me in the evening and the morning, is what she's saying here. So I'm going to play it again, and then let's go through here in G major and put our chords and our inversions in. We don't have the second half, but we can fill that in. So take a minute here, G major now, and let's see if we can't fill in these 4 harmonies. So think both about the Roman numeral and especially about the inversion, numbers that we'll need to use. Let's go ahead and go through this one. So, first chord. Jade. 1, yeah, exactly. G major, 1, in root position, second chord. Okay. 5, 4, 3, yeah. So we can see we're starting this right on Do. Do. So you have Do, Re, then Ti, Do. What's third and then finally fourth chord then? How are we getting back to tonic? Oh, either. Go ahead, Ainsley. 5, 6, 5. Yeah. To 1. Yeah, exactly. So, there are all kinds of nice little details to dig into this, which we will in just a moment. But here we can see kind of something else that can happen in a tonic prolongation. It's not just, completely taking turns, but sometimes you expand a 1 with 2 different forms of the 5 chord. So this is still all tonic prolongation. Since it begins with 1, it ends with 1, bookending this. But now instead of precisely, alternating 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, you get 2 different versions of the 5 chord. You can do it like this. You can do kind of Do, Re, Ti, Do, 1, 5, 4, 3, 5, 6, 5, 1. Or you could do other way. You could just as easily go 1, 5, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3, 1. You can kind of do different formats of this. Or another, another common one might be to go 1, 5, 6, 5, 5, 1, something like that. So you can kind of mix these around. But that's also an effective way to prolong the tonic and then go on to dominant. And what we'll hear, what we heard in the other 4 measures that I sort of went ahead and let play, is that it eventually works its way through a predominant up to dominant and then comes to a stronger cadence, right? There's no sense that this is a cadence. But I think if I let it play after that, you clearly hear how it can continue. So you kind of have this 1, 5, 4, 3, 6, 5, 1, 6, 4, sharp 4, 5, 1. So you can hear a big difference, right, in that interchanging 1, prolonging 1, versus actually moving up towards a cadence. Right. Other thing that I want to point out here, the thing that I want us to start thinking about is how we navigate within that key. We've talked about this a little bit, like when we did the Frozen lesson a couple weeks ago, about non-chord tones, how you elaborate on a melody. But just to kind of highlight this and show you what we're doing here, we've got 2 different sets of notes, right, on our tonic and our dominant, and this melody does a really nice job of sort of outlining those. If you think that we're in G major for the first measure, we're starting on so, you know, the 5th of the chord. We get so, mi, re, do. So we're outlining this chord really clearly. So, mi, do. We get it all in there, connected with a passing tone. So, mi, re, do, do. Then we're going to outline, right, this is going to be so, ti, re, and then if you put the 7th in, you have fa. So we're really going to outline that as well. Ti, do, re, another passing tone. So, and then this stays in effect. Fa, mi, re, do, re, mi. So you can see a lot of the same kind of gesture. Number 1, this one. Mi, re, do, ti, do, re, fa, mi, re, do, re, mi. This is the melodic idea, right, of this song. And it's really kind of driven home very strongly. And we're outlining the different thirds that you can find within these chords. The mi, re, do, right above the tonic. Ti, re, fa here. Elsewhere in the 5 chord, fa, mi, re. Kind of get a good sampling of it. And then do, re, mi, right? Exactly the opposite of that, kind of mirrored. It's called inversion, which we'll get to later. But just to kind of start to sensitize you to how to think about setting a melody to music or